She always knew she was meant for something bigger. From a young age, she had a spark in her eyes, a determination that could not be ignored. Her family often watched her spend hours solving problems that even adults struggled with. While other kids were playing, she was reading about businesses, studying how companies worked, and imagining herself leading one day. Her parents encouraged her curiosity, but they never could have predicted how far she would go. As she grew older, her intelligence and ambition became more noticeable. In school, she was never the type to compete for popularity. She cared about learning and understanding things deeply. Teachers often praised her for her unique ideas and her ability to solve complex problems with ease. She loved to challenge herself, not just to excel academically, but to understand the real world and how people worked. She was fascinated by how decisions were made in boardrooms and how leaders could shape the lives of hundreds or even thousands of people. When she entered college, she did not waste a single moment. She chose a major that combined her passion for business with her love for problem solving. While other students were content with good grades, she aimed to understand everything that was happening around her. She spent countless hours in the library, reading case studies about businesses that failed and those that succeeded, analyzing what made the difference. It wasn't just theory for her, it was preparation for the life she imagined. Internships followed, each one giving her a taste of what it meant to operate in the real business world. She learned quickly, understanding office politics, strategy, and leadership. Her mentors noticed her talent immediately. Many predicted she would not just survive in the business world, but would one day dominate it. What set her apart was not just her intelligence, but her ability to understand people, to see what motivated them, and to know how to inspire loyalty and commitment. She could lead not by fear or authority, but by respect and vision. After college, she entered the corporate world with a fire in her heart. She started in a mid-level position at a struggling company. The company had potential, but it was poorly managed and on the brink of losing relevance. She didn't see it as a problem. She saw it as an opportunity. She started small, observing, learning, and finding ways to make things better. She noticed inefficiencies that others ignored, mistakes that were repeated year after year, and opportunities that were never taken. Slowly, quietly, she began making a difference. Her ideas were not always welcomed at first. Some employees were skeptical of her age and her boldness. Some managers didn't like that she challenged the old ways of doing things. But she had a way of proving herself without confrontation. She took small steps, implemented tiny changes, and when the results were undeniable, everyone began to notice. Slowly, respect replaced skepticism. People started coming to her for advice, and her influence began to grow. Her rise was not easy. She faced countless obstacles. Some colleagues were jealous of her talent, and some doubted her simply because of her background. But she never let those doubts shake her. Every challenge became a lesson. Every obstacle became a chance to show her strength and skill. She worked late nights, skipped weekends, and poured herself into understanding every part of the business. She knew that results would speak louder than words, and she was determined to make them impossible to ignore. Within a few years, her contributions transformed the company. Profits increased, employees were more motivated, and new clients began to flock to the business. She was no longer just an employee. She was a force of change. The leadership began to recognize her value, but not everyone was happy. Some executives felt threatened by her rapid ascent. They saw her intelligence, her influence, and the loyalty she inspired in others, and they worried about their own positions. Yet she remained focused, never letting office politics distract her from the work she loved. Her leadership style was different from most. She didn't rely on authority or fear. She inspired. She spent time with her team, understood their problems, celebrated their successes, and held them accountable in a fair way. Employees admired her because she cared. She made difficult decisions, when necessary, but she always explained her reasoning. She believed that people performed best when they felt respected and understood, and under her guidance, morale soared. Eventually, the board took notice. Her ideas had saved the company from decline and positioned it for growth in ways that others had never imagined. The CEO at the time was approaching retirement, and the question arose, who would lead the company next? While some executives assumed one of the traditional candidates would take over, she was quietly being considered. She didn't seek attention, didn't promote herself aggressively. She let her work speak for itself. But her achievements made her the clear choice. When the announcement finally came, she was named the new CEO. It was a moment of triumph not just for her, but for everyone who had believed in her from the beginning. She stepped into the role with confidence and humility, fully aware of the challenges ahead. She understood that leading a company was not just about making profits, it was about people, strategy, vision, and courage. She was ready. Under her leadership, the company began a new chapter. She launched bold initiatives, modernized outdated systems, and invested in talent and technology. She listened to her employees, valued their input, and created a culture where innovation was encouraged. The company's reputation soared, and its influence expanded into new markets. She became known not just as a capable CEO, but as a visionary leader who could turn challenges into opportunities. Her story began to attract attention outside the company. Industry magazines featured her, speaking about her unique approach to leadership and her impressive accomplishments. She was invited to conferences, panels, and interviews. Young professionals looked up to her, inspired by her journey from a determined student to a powerful executive. She never forgot where she came from, and she always made time to mentor others, believing that success was best when shared. Yet even with all her achievements, there were those who quietly resented her. Some executives and board members felt uneasy with her authority. They were not used to a leader who combined intelligence, empathy, and decisiveness in a way that challenged the old norms. Their doubts and insecurities would soon become more visible, but at this point, she was still unaware of the storm that was quietly brewing behind the scenes. Despite the challenges, she remained focused on her vision. She saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. She believed in innovation, in people, and in doing the right thing, even when it was difficult. She made tough choices that required courage, and she was willing to face criticism if it meant the company would thrive. Her leadership was about building a legacy, not just achieving short-term success. Her journey up to this point had been remarkable. From a curious child to a determined student, from an ambitious employee to a transformative CEO, she had proven, time and again, that intelligence, hard work, and integrity could open doors that others might never even notice. She had built a career based on merit, vision, and respect, and she was ready to take the company to heights that no one had imagined. But little did she know, the very qualities that made her an extraordinary leader, the confidence, the intelligence, and the unwavering dedication would soon be challenged. Envy and fear among a few powerful figures at the company would set in motion a chain of events that would test her resilience like never before. For now, though, she was at the peak of her rise, ready to shape her future and the future of the company with bold decisions and fearless leadership. Her story in this first stage was one of growth, vision, and determination. It was a story about rising against the odds, about the power of intelligence and hard work, and about the belief that one person, if committed and courageous enough, could make a real difference. She was not just a CEO. She was a symbol of what dedication, skill, and heart could achieve in a world that often underestimated people like her. And as she walked through the halls of the company, surrounded by colleagues who trusted her and employees who admired her, she felt a quiet pride. She had earned her place not by luck, not by connections, but by proving herself every single day. It was a victory that was hard won, and it would serve as the foundation for the battles and triumphs yet to come. Things seemed to be going perfectly. The company was growing faster than ever. Employees were motivated, and she was confident in her leadership. She had worked hard to earn every bit of success, and she believed that the future held even greater possibilities. Every decision she made was for the betterment of the company and the people who trusted her. But sometimes, even when you do everything right, others can't handle someone else's success. It started slowly at first. Subtle changes in behavior, small remarks that seemed harmless, but over time began to add up. A few executives began questioning her decisions in ways they never had before. Meetings that used to be collaborative now had undercurrents of tension. She noticed sidelong glances, hushed conversations that stopped when she entered the room, and sudden objections to ideas she knew were sound. At first, she tried to ignore it, thinking it was just a temporary reaction to change. After all, she had faced skepticism before. But it was more than skepticism. She started hearing whispers about fit and leadership style. Some board members who had once been supportive began to speak privately about her in ways that were critical and unfair. They questioned her methods, her communication, even the way she dressed or handled meetings. It was subtle, almost invisible to those outside the inner circle. But she felt it. She could sense the shift. And even though it was painful to realize, she knew that jealousy and fear were driving these actions. The tension grew, and one day it became impossible to ignore. She received a message from the board requesting an urgent meeting. The note was brief, formal, and cold. There was no explanation, no warning, just a time and a place. She felt a sinking feeling in her chest, but she held her head high. She had faced challenges before and had always come through. She believed that reason and results would protect her. But as she walked into the boardroom that morning, she sensed that things were about to change in ways she could not have anticipated. The room was filled with familiar faces, yet the energy was strange and tense. As she took her seat, the board members exchanged quiet, serious looks. The conversation started normally enough, discussing quarterly results and upcoming projects. But then, without warning, one of the senior executives shifted the discussion toward leadership concerns. At first, she listened patiently, assuming it was just another round of feedback. But as the words continued, it became clear that this was something else entirely. They accused her of being too assertive, of making decisions without consulting everyone, of allegedly upsetting the balance of power. Their tone was formal, almost polite, but there was an undercurrent of hostility that made it impossible to ignore. They framed their concerns as being for the good of the company, but it was obvious that it was about control, not performance. Every argument she made, backed by data and results, was dismissed or twisted. They even claimed that her success was somehow threatening to the company culture. She tried to respond calmly, explaining her reasoning, but the board seemed unwilling to listen. The most shocking part came next. They told her that she was being asked to step down immediately. They painted it as a voluntary resignation, implying that it was her choice, that it was for her own good. But the look in their eyes, the coldness in their voices, and the way the room fell silent when they spoke, told her the truth. This was forced. She was being removed from the position she had worked so hard to earn. In that moment, all the pride, confidence, and certainty she had built over years of hard work collided with disbelief and anger. She asked questions, trying to understand how this could happen. She wanted to know the evidence, the complaints, anything that justified this decision. But the board offered nothing concrete. There were no documented failures, no proof of misconduct, just vague accusations and insinuations. It was clear that the decision was personal, driven by fear and envy rather than any legitimate business reason. Her hand shook slightly, but she refused to show weakness. She had always believed in handling challenges with composure, and even in this moment of shock, she maintained her dignity. When she left the boardroom, the weight of the situation hit her fully. She had spent years building this company, transforming it into something strong, respected, and thriving. And now it was being taken away in an instant. It wasn't just a professional blow, it was personal. She had invested her heart, mind, and soul into every decision, every strategy, every late night, and now it was being dismissed as if it meant nothing. The injustice was overwhelming, but deep inside she felt a spark of determination. She would not let this stand. In the following days, the story spread quietly within the company. Employees were confused, shocked, and upset. Many had supported her, believed in her vision, and trusted her leadership. They knew she was a capable and fair leader, and the news of her forced departure seemed absurd. She received messages of support from colleagues, former mentors, and even clients who had seen firsthand the difference she had made. Those messages reminded her that she was not alone, that people recognized her worth even if some in power did not. Despite the personal and professional betrayal, she refused to react impulsively. She took time to understand the situation fully, speaking with trusted advisors and close confidants. She documented everything, emails, board meeting notes, decisions made, and evidence of her achievements. She knew that if she wanted to challenge this unjust decision, she would need facts, proof, and a clear strategy. Anger alone would not win this fight, but preparation, intelligence, and determination could. She also reflected on how this had happened. It was painful to realize that success could provoke such fear and resentment. People who had once seemed supportive had turned against her when her influence grew too large. It was a harsh lesson in the realities of corporate politics, and it reminded her that being brilliant and capable did not always protect you from envy or bias. But she refused to let bitterness consume her. Instead, she used it as motivation. She would respond with strength, clarity, and strategy, not emotion. While she prepared for the next steps, the company tried to maintain appearances. Publicly, her departure was described as a voluntary resignation, and statements were made praising her contributions, while subtly suggesting that her leadership style was not aligned with the board's vision. It was an attempt to control the narrative, to protect the company's image while minimizing the damage caused by their own actions. But internally, the employees who knew the truth were upset. They had seen her dedication, integrity, and skill, and they knew that this removal was unfair and undeserved. During this time, she also thought about her personal life. She had sacrificed so much to reach this point: long hours, missed family gatherings, countless nights of stress. But she had done it willingly because she believed in her vision. Now, faced with betrayal, she realized that all her efforts had not been in vain. She had made a difference. The company was stronger because of her work. The employees were better because of her leadership. And she had proven to herself that she could rise above challenges. She knew she needed allies. She reached out to former colleagues, mentors, and professional contacts. She explained the situation calmly, without anger or exaggeration. People listened, offered support, and reminded her of her strengths. Some offered advice about next steps. Others simply offered encouragement. Slowly, she began to rebuild a plan, a way to fight back against the unfair treatment and reclaim her reputation. She was not going to allow the actions of a few envious executives to erase years of hard work and achievements. One evening, as she sat alone in her office reflecting on the events, she felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief, but also a growing sense of resolve. This was not the end of her story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. She understood that the road ahead would be difficult, that the fight would be challenging and exhausting. But she also knew that she had the tools, the intelligence, and the courage to succeed. She would not be silenced. She would not accept injustice quietly. As the days passed, she began reaching out to lawyers who specialized in corporate law. She knew that she needed experts who could navigate the complexities of employment contracts, corporate governance, and legal strategy. It was not just about money. It was about justice, accountability, and restoring her reputation. Her lawyers listened carefully, asked questions, and began building a case. They examined her employment agreement, reviewed board decisions, and uncovered patterns that clearly showed wrongful termination and discrimination. For the first time since her forced exit, she felt hope. While her legal team worked, she also started thinking about her long-term vision. She realized that even if she regained her position or received compensation, the experience had taught her valuable lessons. She now understood the depth of corporate politics, the importance of allies, and the need for careful strategy. She reflected on her journey so far, the challenges she had overcome, the successes she had achieved, and the resilience she had shown. She knew that whatever happened next, she would face it with courage, intelligence, and determination. The company, meanwhile, was trying to move on without her, but the absence was felt immediately. Projects slowed, employees were uncertain, and morale dropped. Her leadership had created stability, vision, and motivation, and without her, those qualities were hard to replace. People began to realize what they had lost, and whispers of regret started to circulate. Some executives who had pushed for her removal began to feel the consequences of their decisions. Through it all, she remained composed. She didn't lash out publicly or spread rumors. She focused on facts, strategy, and planning her next steps. She knew that patience, intelligence, and careful action would win in the end. She had faced obstacles before, and had always found a way to turn challenges into opportunities. This situation, though painful, was no different. In those weeks after being forced out, she discovered something powerful about herself. She realized that her strength was not just in her intelligence or her leadership skills, but in her ability to rise above injustice, to remain focused under pressure, and to turn adversity into opportunity. The fire inside her, which had driven her from childhood to CEO, burned brighter than ever. She knew that her story was far from over. After the initial shock of being forced out, she slowly began to regain her focus. The anger and disbelief had not disappeared, but they were now tempered by determination. She realized that waiting quietly would only allow the board to control the narrative. If she wanted justice, she had to act. And she was ready to act, carefully and strategically. She began by reaching out to top lawyers who specialized in corporate disputes. She knew she needed professionals who could navigate the legal complexities of her situation and who would fight tirelessly for her rights. The first meetings were intense. She laid out every detail, from the boardroom conversations to the subtle patterns of undermining that had led to her forced exit. The lawyers listened attentively, taking notes, asking questions, and reviewing her documentation. She had kept meticulous records over the years, emails, reports, performance reviews, and now those records became her shield and her sword. Her legal team was impressed not just by the evidence but by her composure. Many clients in her situation would have been emotional, reactive, or hesitant, but she approached the matter with clarity and precision. She knew that this was not only a fight for her position, but also a battle for her reputation. The lawyers began constructing a plan, outlining potential strategies and the best approaches to hold the company accountable. They explained the legal avenues she could take, the possible outcomes, and the steps needed to build a strong, undeniable case. The first step was to formally challenge the board's decision. They drafted detailed letters demanding explanations, requesting evidence, and highlighting the discrepancies in how the decision was presented versus the reality of her performance. She personally reviewed every word, ensuring that the tone was firm but professional, assertive but not aggressive. She understood that perception mattered as much as facts. Any hint of weakness could be used against her, while any unnecessary hostility could distract from the strength of her case. While the legal process began, she also started reaching out to her professional network. She contacted former colleagues, clients, and industry peers, not to complain or gain sympathy, but to ensure that her side of the story was known to people who mattered. She wanted to make sure that her reputation, built over years of hard work, was not tarnished by the misleading narrative the company was trying to present. The responses she received were overwhelmingly supportive. People expressed disbelief at the injustice, praised her leadership, and offered advice or assistance. Those messages reminded her that she was not alone and strengthened her resolve. Every day she spent hours going over company records with her lawyers. They examined board meeting minutes, communications, performance reports, and internal evaluations. Patterns began to emerge, clear evidence that her termination was not based on performance but on fear and envy. Decisions she had made, which had increased profits, improved employee morale, and strengthened the company's position, were being ignored or misrepresented. Meanwhile, mistakes by other executives were overlooked or minimized. The lawyers began piecing together a narrative that would show the world the truth. It wasn't easy. There were moments of frustration, when the weight of the betrayal and the enormity of the fight threatened to overwhelm her. She had invested years of her life into this company, and now she was forced to defend not just her career but her integrity. But each challenge became a motivation. She reminded herself that she had overcome obstacles before, that she had faced skepticism, bias, and adversity throughout her life. She was capable of navigating this too. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when her lawyers uncovered clear violations of corporate policy by the board. They discovered instances where proper procedures had not been followed, where decisions were made in secret, and where documentation had been manipulated. Each piece of evidence strengthened her case and gave her the confidence to proceed. It was no longer just a personal fight. It was about holding the company accountable and ensuring that such injustices could not continue unchecked. Meanwhile, she also focused on her own well-being. The stress of the situation was intense, and she knew she could not afford to let it consume her. She maintained a routine, exercised, and spent time reflecting on her goals. She reminded herself that the battle was not only legal but personal, and she needed clarity and strength to face it. Her resilience, built over years of challenges and accomplishments, became her greatest asset. As the legal strategy took shape, she also thought about the potential outcomes. There was the possibility of reinstatement, a public apology, financial compensation, or a combination of these. She prepared herself mentally for each scenario, but she was clear that her main objective was justice and fairness. She wanted to show that competence, integrity, and hard work could not be dismissed so easily. She wanted to set an example, not just for herself but for everyone who might face similar unfair treatment in their careers. During this time, she also reflected on the lessons she had learned. She realized how crucial it was to have allies, to document everything and to maintain integrity even in the face of adversity. The experience had shown her the importance of preparation, strategy, and calmness. It had also reinforced her belief that true leadership is not just about success, but about resilience, courage, and the ability to navigate challenges with dignity. Her lawyers moved forward, sending formal communications to the board and requesting meetings to discuss the evidence. The company was forced to respond, and the tension between the parties grew. She knew that public perception could become a factor, so she remained careful about what she shared outside of official channels. Every conversation was measured, every action deliberate. She understood that the fight was as much about strategy and patience as it was about facts and evidence. In the midst of this, she also began preparing for the possibility of media attention. She had never sought the spotlight, but she understood that the story could gain traction. She made plans to communicate her side clearly, focusing on the truth and her commitment to fairness and transparency. She wanted the public to understand that this was not a battle of ego, but a fight for justice and integrity. She wanted to control her narrative before others could distort it. Her efforts soon began to pay off. The board, realizing that she had a strong legal case and substantial evidence, started to feel pressure. Executives who had been confident in their decision now began to second-guess themselves. Internal communications revealed tension and uncertainty. They had underestimated her determination and the strength of her legal team. Every document, every testimony, every piece of evidence she had collected added to the pressure on the company. Even as the legal battle unfolded, she remained focused on her own growth. She continued to explore opportunities for the future, knowing that whether or not she returned to her former position, her skills, experience, and vision would always be valuable. She networked, attended industry events, and maintained relationships with mentors and colleagues. She refused to let the injustice define her. Instead, she used it to fuel her ambition and sharpen her focus. The support she received from employees and industry peers was heartening. Many expressed admiration for her courage and resilience. Some former colleagues offered to testify on her behalf, while others provided documentation that further strengthened her case. The loyalty she had inspired over the years became an unexpected advantage, proving that her leadership had left a lasting impact on those she had worked with. Through all of this, she maintained her integrity. She never resorted to slander, gossip, or retaliation. Every action was guided by fairness, evidence, and strategy. She understood that the moment she allowed anger or personal vendetta to dictate her decisions, she would lose credibility. Her lawyers often reminded her that calmness and precision were her greatest strengths, and she adhered to that advice strictly. Weeks turned into months as the legal process continued. Meetings were held, evidence was reviewed, and negotiations began behind closed doors. She remained patient, understanding that the fight required time and perseverance. Each small victory, whether uncovering a new piece of evidence, receiving acknowledgement from an ally, or gaining leverage in negotiations, was a step toward justice. And each step reinforced her belief that she had made the right choice by standing up for herself. As the battle progressed, she also thought about the broader implications. She realized that her fight was not just about her own career, but about creating accountability in the corporate world. She wanted to show that intelligence, hard work, and integrity could not be dismissed, and that those who abused power to eliminate threats would face consequences. This understanding gave her a sense of purpose beyond personal victory. It became a mission to uphold fairness and justice in a system that often overlooked them. Through careful strategy, meticulous preparation, and unwavering determination, she was turning what had initially seemed like a devastating setback into an opportunity to demonstrate strength, resilience, and leadership. The support of her lawyers, peers, and employees gave her confidence, while the evidence she had collected ensured that she was prepared for every challenge. She had transformed anger and disappointment into focus and strategy, and she was ready to take the fight to the next level. By the end of this stage of her journey, she had not only secured a formidable legal team, but had also reclaimed her sense of agency. She understood that the path ahead would be difficult, but she had the skills, the knowledge, and the determination to see it through. The forced exit, which had initially felt like the end of her career, had now become the catalyst for a new battle, one that she was prepared to win. Her story was no longer just about corporate success. It was about courage, resilience, and the fight for justice. It was about standing up when others tried to push you down, about using intelligence and strategy to overcome adversity, and about proving that true leadership is defined not by power or position, but by integrity, vision, and perseverance. And as she prepared for the next phase of the fight, she knew one thing clearly. She would not just survive this challenge, she would emerge stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. The weeks turned into months, and the legal battle began to take shape in ways she had hoped for. Her lawyers had built a strong case, supported by evidence that clearly showed the injustice she had faced. Emails, meeting minutes, internal reports, and testimonies all painted the same picture. She had been forced out not for her performance, but because some people at the top felt threatened by her talent, vision, and influence. It was a meticulous, careful, and undeniable case. Even though she had expected resistance, the reality of the fight was still exhausting. Each day brought new challenges, new forms of pushback, and constant negotiation. The company did not make it easy. Their executives hired lawyers of their own, countering every point, looking for loopholes, and attempting to discredit her accomplishments. Some of them reached out to her former employees, hoping to twist narratives or stir doubt. She expected this, but it was still stressful to see the company trying to manipulate perception while she worked to reveal the truth. Despite the pressure, she remained calm and focused. She understood that patience was as important as action. Every piece of evidence, every email, and every witness testimony had to be carefully documented and presented in the right way. She worked closely with her lawyers, reviewing every detail, making sure that nothing was left to chance. The months of preparation she had put in after her forced exit now proved invaluable. What had once been a pile of documents and memories now became a solid foundation for a case that could not be ignored. As the case gained momentum, word began to spread within the industry. Some media outlets caught wind of the story, intrigued by the unusual circumstances of a CEO being forced out under suspicious circumstances. While she had initially wanted to stay private, she knew that the narrative would eventually reach the public and she needed to control it. With her lawyer's guidance, she began preparing statements that would communicate her side of the story clearly, without exaggeration or emotion-driven attacks. The goal was to let the facts speak for themselves. The public's response once the story started to surface was overwhelmingly supportive. People admired her courage and determination. Social media and industry forums buzzed with discussions about fairness, corporate accountability, and the resilience she was showing. Colleagues and former employees spoke up to defend her reputation, sharing stories of her integrity, leadership, and dedication. The tide of public opinion was beginning to turn in her favor, and she felt a sense of vindication, even amidst the ongoing struggle. Inside the company, however, the atmosphere was tense. Executives who had pushed for her removal were now feeling the weight of scrutiny. Meetings that were once confident and dismissive now contained moments of hesitation. Internal communications revealed worry and uncertainty. The evidence she and her lawyers had uncovered left the board with fewer options than they had imagined. They had underestimated her determination and the strength of her legal case, and now they were scrambling to respond. Her lawyers began formal negotiations with the company's legal team. These meetings were intense, sometimes heated, but always professional. Each point she raised was backed by evidence. Each argument was logical, precise, and impossible to dismiss. The company's attempts to minimize their actions, claim compliance with policy, or shift blame were systematically dismantled by the facts. For her, it was both exhausting and empowering. Exhausting because of the relentless pace and attention to detail required. Empowering because she saw that the truth could not be hidden forever. During this time, she also took the opportunity to reflect on her own journey. She had faced skepticism, envy, and systemic challenges throughout her life, but she had always overcome them through intelligence, perseverance, and integrity. This challenge was different in scale, but it was the same in principle. She reminded herself daily that her achievements were not defined by the opinions of those trying to push her down, but by the tangible results she had created, the lives she had positively impacted, and the legacy she had built. Her lawyers also explored additional avenues to strengthen the case. They reached out to employees who had worked closely with her, gathering statements about her leadership style, her contributions, and the culture she had built. Every testimonial reinforced the narrative of a capable, innovative, and ethical leader being unfairly targeted by fear and jealousy. Witnesses spoke about her long hours, thoughtful decisions, and the way she had genuinely cared for the people she led. It became clear that the story was no longer just about corporate politics. It was about fairness, accountability, and human decency. The media began to pay closer attention as negotiations continued. Articles appeared discussing the unusual circumstances, highlighting the systemic challenges faced by leaders who broke the mold, and emphasizing her resilience. She remained cautious, giving interviews only with her lawyers present or in carefully prepared written statements. Her goal was not sensationalism, it was truth. She wanted the public to see the facts, to understand her journey, and to recognize the injustice she had faced. Inside the company, the pressure continued to mount. Executives were forced to acknowledge publicly that her accomplishments had been real, that she had genuinely transformed the business, and that her removal had been handled poorly. The company tried to frame it as a misunderstanding or a difference in vision, but internally the tension was palpable. Board members who had been confident in their decisions were now questioning every move, fearing that the legal and public attention could have long-term consequences. Throughout this period, she remained focused not only on the fight, but also on herself. She maintained routines that helped her stay grounded: exercise, reflection, and connecting with trusted friends and advisors. She reminded herself that this battle, while important, was part of a larger journey. She had already accomplished so much, and whatever happened next, she would continue to lead, innovate, and inspire. Her strength came not only from legal strategy, but from the resilience and clarity she had developed over years of overcoming obstacles. The negotiations slowly reached a critical point. The company's legal team realized that continuing to resist could be more damaging than reaching a settlement. The evidence was strong, the public opinion favorable to her, and the employees still loyal to her influence. They had underestimated her resolve and the meticulous preparation of her legal team. Now they were facing a situation where concessions seemed inevitable, and the pressure to resolve the matter increased with each passing day. She approached this stage with calm determination. She knew that the settlement or resolution would require careful handling to ensure that her reputation was fully restored, that the company acknowledged wrongdoing, and that meaningful changes were made to prevent similar situations in the future. She did not aim for revenge, she aimed for justice, fairness, and accountability. Every negotiation point was considered with precision, balancing firmness with professionalism. During the final discussions, she was also thinking about the broader impact of her fight. She realized that the outcome would not only affect her, but could set a precedent for how companies treated their leaders, particularly those who faced bias or unjust treatment. She wanted to make sure that the result sent a clear message. Competence, integrity, and leadership cannot be dismissed, and unethical actions have consequences. Her perspective extended beyond personal gain. She wanted her experience to create a positive ripple effect in the corporate world. The final days of negotiation were tense, but decisive. Both sides presented their terms, compromises were discussed, and legal language was meticulously reviewed. She remained composed, aware that any misstep could undermine the hard work and evidence accumulated over months. Her lawyers advised her carefully, and together they ensured that the final outcome would reflect fairness, accountability, and respect for her achievements. Eventually, a resolution was reached. The company agreed to acknowledge the mishandling of her removal, issued a formal apology, and agreed to provide a settlement that recognized her contributions and compensated for the unfair treatment. Policies were revised to prevent similar incidents in the future. Her reputation was fully restored, and the employees, clients, and industry peers who had supported her could see the justice that had been achieved. The resolution was not just a personal victory, It was a testament to perseverance, intelligence, and integrity. It demonstrated that standing up for oneself, even in the face of powerful opposition, could lead to meaningful change. Her journey through this battle became a story of resilience, courage, and the power of evidence-based strategy combined with unwavering determination. Through it all, she emerged not only victorious but stronger, wiser, and more confident in her leadership. The experience had tested her in ways that few challenges ever had, but it had also reinforced her belief in fairness, accountability, and the value of standing up for what is right. She knew that the lessons learned from this period would guide her in future endeavors, shaping not only her career but her approach to leadership, strategy, and justice. Her story at this stage was no longer just about a CEO fighting for her position. It was about the principles that define leadership, the importance of courage in the face of adversity, and the ability to turn challenges into opportunities for growth. She had faced betrayal, manipulation, and fear, but she had responded with intelligence, strategy, and resilience, and in the end, she had emerged triumphant. The victory brought her a sense of relief she had not felt in months, but also a renewed sense of purpose. The battle had been long, exhausting, and emotionally draining, yet it had also proven her strength, resilience, and intelligence. She realized that while the fight had been about regaining her position and reputation, it had become something much larger, a testament to perseverance, courage, and the importance of standing up against injustice. As the settlement was finalized, the company issued a formal apology. It was more than just words. It was a recognition of the mistakes made, the mishandling of her departure, and the unjust treatment she had endured. The company also implemented changes to prevent similar situations from happening in the future. Policies were revised, oversight improved, and a stronger culture of accountability was established. These changes would impact the company for years to come, a lasting legacy of the struggle she had faced. Employees, many of whom had been quietly watching and waiting throughout the ordeal, now expressed relief and admiration. They sent messages of support, shared their gratitude, and spoke openly about the positive impact she had on their work and lives. She realized that leadership was never just about making decisions from the top. It was about the connections you build, the respect you earn, and the way you inspire others to believe in themselves. Seeing the appreciation from her team reminded her that the fight had been worth it. Her public reputation, once threatened by the board's attempts to frame her departure, was now fully restored. The media covered the resolution carefully, highlighting her intelligence, resilience, and ethical approach to leadership. Stories emphasized that she had not only defended herself, but had also stood up for fairness, integrity, and accountability in the corporate world. Public reaction was overwhelmingly supportive, with many applauding her courage in the face of adversity. She received messages from people across the industry who had been inspired by her story, reminding her that her journey had become a symbol for others. Despite the satisfaction of victory, she remained grounded. She understood that success was not defined solely by legal victories or public recognition, but by the ability to continue leading with integrity, vision, and dedication. She returned her focus to the work she loved: innovation, strategy, and building a strong ethical company culture. The experience had strengthened her resolve and clarified her purpose. She now had an even greater commitment to ensuring that the company thrived while maintaining a fair and supportive environment for all employees. As she stepped back into professional life, she approached every decision with heightened awareness. The months of navigating boardroom politics, legal challenges, and public perception had taught her invaluable lessons. She became even more strategic, thoughtful, and intentional in her actions. Every project she launched, every initiative she led, and every conversation she had was infused with the knowledge that integrity and transparency must guide leadership, no matter the circumstances. One of the most significant realizations during this period was the power of preparation and persistence. She had learned that evidence, careful planning, and calm determination were far more effective than emotion or impulsive action. Every step she had taken, every document she had collected, every piece of evidence she had presented had been crucial in securing justice. She understood now more than ever that diligence and persistence are the tools that turn adversity into opportunity. Her legal victory also opened doors to new opportunities. Industry leaders and potential partners reached out, recognizing not only her capabilities but also her resilience. She had shown that she could navigate not only business challenges, but also complex human and organizational dynamics. This strengthened her influence and credibility in ways that had not been possible before. Her career was no longer defined only by her role as a CEO, but by her ability to inspire, lead, and transform organizations with fairness and vision. She also took the time to mentor others, having experienced firsthand the challenges of unfair treatment and the importance of standing up for oneself. She became a guide for those navigating difficult professional situations. She shared her story, the strategies she had used, and the mindset that had allowed her to persevere. Her mentorship became another avenue for impact, empowering people to act with confidence, integrity, and courage in their own careers. Her personal growth during this period was profound. The experience had tested her patience, resilience, and leadership in ways that few challenges ever had. She had faced betrayal, manipulation, and fear, yet she emerged stronger and more self-aware. She understood the importance of balancing ambition with integrity, decisiveness with empathy, and resilience with strategic thinking. The lessons learned would guide her not just in her career, but in every aspect of her life. The resolution also allowed her to reconnect with her vision for the future. She began planning new initiatives and ventures that reflected her values and ambitions. These projects were bold, innovative, and designed to make a real difference in the industry. She was not motivated by revenge or resentment. She was motivated by the desire to build something meaningful, lasting, and impactful. Her leadership style, already admired, now carried an added weight of experience, resilience, and authority. Looking back, she realized how far she had come. From a young, ambitious professional to a transformative CEO, from a shocked and betrayed leader to a victorious and empowered one, her journey had been extraordinary. The challenges she had faced had revealed her strengths, tested her principles, and proven her ability to lead under pressure. She understood that true leadership is not measured only by successes in calm times, but by the ability to rise when the odds are against you. Her victory also served as a powerful reminder of the importance of support systems. The colleagues, mentors, lawyers, and employees who had stood by her, believed in her, and provided guidance had been instrumental in her success. She recognized that leadership is not a solitary journey. The relationships she had built, the trust she had earned, and the alliances she had nurtured had all played a critical role in the outcome. She made a point to express her gratitude and ensure that those who had helped her were recognized. Even as she moved forward, she did not forget the lessons learned from betrayal and envy. She remained vigilant, aware of the potential for similar challenges in the future. But instead of fear, this awareness brought clarity and strategic insight. She knew that resilience, preparation, and integrity were her greatest tools, and that she could face future obstacles with confidence. Her past experiences had become a source of strength, shaping her into a leader who was not only capable but wise. The final impact of this journey extended beyond her personal and professional achievements. Her story became a symbol for others who faced injustice, discrimination, or unfair treatment in the workplace. She had shown that standing up for oneself, even against powerful opposition, could lead to meaningful change. Her journey inspired others to act with courage, pursue justice, and maintain integrity in the face of adversity. She became a role model not just for leaders in business, but for anyone striving to overcome obstacles with dignity and perseverance. As she settled back into her career, she approached every challenge with renewed confidence and clarity. The months of struggle had sharpened her skills, strengthened her resolve, and reinforced her principles. She became a more decisive, strategic, and compassionate leader, understanding the human elements that drive business, the importance of ethical decision-making, and the value of maintaining composure under pressure. Every choice she made reflected the lessons learned from the battle she had endured. Her victory also provided a platform for advocacy. She began speaking at conferences, writing articles, and participating in panels focused on leadership, ethics, and workplace fairness. She shared her story openly, not to boast, but to educate, inspire, and encourage others to stand up for themselves. Her message was clear. Resilience, preparation, and integrity can overcome even the most daunting challenges. She had lived it, and she wanted others to know that they could too. As time passed, the company stabilized under new leadership and policies, but her impact remained. Employees continued to speak highly of her, and the culture she had fostered persisted. Her contributions had reshaped the organization in lasting ways, creating systems, practices, and a culture that valued competence, fairness, and ethical leadership. Her influence extended far beyond the immediate resolution, leaving a legacy that would endure. On a personal level, she found peace. The stress, betrayal, and uncertainty that had weighed heavily on her for months were finally lifted. She felt proud of how she had handled the situation, calmly, strategically, and with unwavering integrity. She had proven to herself that she could face adversity without compromising her values. This realization brought a profound sense of accomplishment and personal growth that no legal victory or public recognition could fully measure. Her story concluded not with revenge or bitterness, but with empowerment and triumph. She had faced an immense challenge, fought tirelessly, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable than ever. She had turned a period of injustice and adversity into an opportunity for growth, influence, and lasting impact. Her journey became an example of how determination, strategy, and integrity can overcome even the most difficult circumstances. In the end, she understood that the greatest victories are not always the ones celebrated publicly. They are the victories of resilience, courage, and character. She had reclaimed her reputation, achieved justice, and set a powerful example for others. But perhaps most importantly, she had proven to herself that no obstacle, no betrayal, and no unfair treatment could define her, diminish her achievements, or shake her commitment to leading with integrity. As she looked forward, she knew that new challenges would come, as they always do in life. But she was ready. She had faced adversity at its most intense and had emerged victorious. She had learned the value of preparation, strategy, and perseverance. She had learned the importance of allies, documentation, and calm composure. And she had learned that integrity, intelligence, and courage are the most powerful tools a person can possess. Her journey, from rising star to unjustly removed CEO to victorious and empowered leader, would remain a story of inspiration. It was a story about human strength, resilience, and the power of standing up for what is right. It was about the ability to transform hardship into opportunity and to turn injustice into a triumph that benefits not only oneself, but others as well. And as she moved forward into the next chapter of her life, she carried with her the lessons, the victories, and the wisdom of the journey. She was no longer defined by the unfair actions of others, but by the strength, courage, and integrity with which she had met them. Her future was bright, her influence enduring, and her story a reminder that resilience, justice, and unwavering determination can overcome even the greatest challenges.